Hello, thanks for joining me on my channel today. Before I even get started, I want to express how I feel. I have so much gratitude in my heart for the things that I've gone through and for the things that I have. I honestly wish I could describe this feeling that I have. It's almost a feeling of euphoria. And, sometimes I don't know if you get that gut feeling that you should just do something. Well, I've been trying to ignore that feeling all day, and I guess I shouldn't. So let's get back to the story. Um, like I said, when I was 22, that's when I came out, and I was excited that I was finally able to put the feelings into words. I went home and tried to share this with my mother, but her phrase throughout all my life and just shut me down was, I know. I found it very hard to talk to her and share things with her because I always heard that, I know. What do you think I've been trying to tell you? Somebody else tells you and you believe me. No. When I told her I thought I was gay, she told me that she already knew and that she had known for a long time. And I said, well, why didn't you tell me? And she said, because you wouldn't have believed me. She said, but I guarantee you, once you're able to shut the door on the past, you'll find a good man, settle down, raise kids, and have a family. Well, I knew the option for having kids was taken away from me when I had my kidneys out. The doctor told me then that it would either be me or the baby. And I didn't want to have to make that choice. I didn't want anybody to have to make that choice. So it was just better off for me not to have kids. Besides, I was not healthy enough to have kids. It would have been detrimental to them, and I didn't feel it was right bringing children into a world where their mother was screwed up as bad as I was. So I knew that wasn't going to happen. I was living in Salt Lake at the time and went to the bishop of the singles ward I attended. I remember walking in there and saying, Bishop, I think I'm gay. And he got a little anxious, started shuffling papers on his desk and said, Cheryl, well, I don't think that's a problem right now. Well, it obviously was a problem or I wouldn't have been there. So when I walked out of his office, I walked out of the church. He didn't want to deal with it. He didn't want to help me. My mom guaranteed me that I wasn't. But I knew I was. And I thought, okay, no one wants to help me, so I'll do this on my own. And that's what I did. I did it on my own. And I truly was on my own. I no longer felt the spirit. I no longer felt a connection to anything or anyone. And I was going to prove to myself that I could do it. Hindsight's 2020, and doing it on your own is very, very hard when you don't have guidance from anybody. You make up the rules as you go along, and so that's what I did. And between the ages of 22 and 26, I really got involved in the community. Got to meet a lot of people. Had some good times. But I wasn't finding what I was looking for. And that was my first experience. I hadn't found anybody that I thought that I would want to share that with, but I did. I was sleeping with men too during the 22 to 26 and decided that that was not for me. That just, it didn't feel right, didn't feel good. And so I was looking elsewhere. And I fell in love with a woman who was 16 years older than I was. She had black hair and blue eyes, and that was it for me. It was, she was 16 years older than me and 6 years older than my mother. And my mother did not like that. My mother did not like that at all. And her kids were close to my age, and so it was kind of weird being in a relationship with her that's 16 years older than me and her kids that were my age and just a little bit younger. Needless to say, there were many ups and downs, and this person was not faithful, was not monogamous. She liked to play around and play the field. And so the relationship didn't last very long, but she was a midwife, and she took me on a couple of births with her, and I tell you what, there is nothing more magical, nothing more spiritual than watching a baby being born. It's just it's just the most amazing feeling, the most amazing thing I had ever seen in my life. And I will never forget that. Well, as the time went along, she decided she wanted to move down to Texas because in Texas, midwives were licensed and they weren't here in Utah. She had more freedom in Texas. And so I didn't want to stay in Utah, and she told me she didn't want me to stay in Texas. So what I did was I went to live with my dad in Colorado, and talk about an interesting experience. I had the opportunity to sit down and talk with him about the abuse. And I was disappointed. He never took responsibility. He tried to push it off onto his and my mom's sex life, and I told him, I said, look, I don't want to know anything about that. That's none of my business. It just, I don't want to hear it. He asked me if I thought I was gay because of what happened. And at that point in time, I didn't know. I was at a point in my life where I finally liked me. I really wanted him to talk, but he wasn't ready. He wasn't ready to ask for forgiveness. He, like I said, he tried to blame my mom. But I When my younger sister was having her last child, my dad wanted to come to California, come to Utah, and be there for his birth, but he was afraid. So I called my sister and I asked her if it was all right if Dad came. And she said yes, but to understand that he was not going to stay in their home. And she would be very guarded with him. I remember sitting at the kitchen table with my stepmother and Dad, and he went bowling. It was his bowling night. And my stepmom asked me why my dad was so afraid of his kids. And I asked her if she really wanted to know. She said that she did. So I proceeded to tell her about the molestation. And I was not ready for the response. I felt guilty because once she confronted my father, it devastated her. She didn't know what to do. She was in bed for a couple of days, and I thought for sure that I had destroyed their marriage. Fortunately for my stepmom, she was a very forgiving person, and she was able to, I don't know if she was able to forgive him completely, but they did stay married. After I told my stepmom, my dad told me that he was very grateful that I told her, because he didn't know how. This was her first marriage and she wanted kids, and he would not have kids. He was very adamant about not having any more kids. After she learned why, it made perfect sense to her as to why they wouldn't have any kids together. So I was in Colorado for about a year and a half and was getting lonely, missing my friends here in Salt Lake or in Utah. And I had a very love-hate relationship with Utah. I loved it while I was away and hated it while I was here. And so that's what precipitated my move to Colorado. But anyway, I was there for almost 2 years, and like I said, I was missing my friends really bad. So I came back and picked up right where I left off in the community and doing things with my friends. There is a church called Metropolitan Community Church, and it was catered to gays and lesbians. And I got involved in that. And I enjoyed some of it. I enjoyed the people I met, but the pastor was a piece of work. He was a returned missionary, and all he did was denigrate the church at every opportunity he got. And when he would speak, his sermons, that's all he did was tear the church down. And so I was getting pretty tired of that, getting pretty old, and I confronted him on several occasions, and he told me I was crazy. He told me that I needed to look within me and get things right within my heart. Even though I was living a life of sin, I still had things that I held very dear and sacred. I know it seems a dichotomy to be living the lifestyle and yet to have these things that meant so much to me. I, I put up with him for as long as I could. And I finally decided not to go back because he just wouldn't listen. He was a manipulator, he was a pedophile, he was an all around jerk. And so it was easy to leave and not go back and not submit myself to the torment. One good thing did come out of going to church is I met someone else. Now, in the gay community, it's kind of an ancestral community. You know, the big thing was lesbians can't be friends. Well, in some parts, that's true. In some ways, that's very true, because you looked upon another woman as a potential partner. I could